Hi, I'm Natalie Brunell, and let's talk a little bit about the difference between Austrian economics, which many Bitcoiners align themselves with, and Keynesian economics, which is really at the core of our current government policy in the US. Now, Austrians are pro-capitalism, saving, and free markets, while Keynesians are pro-consumerism, spending, and government intervention. So let's start first with Austrian economics. Its original founders and leaders came from the Austrian Empire in the mid-1800s, hence the name, and they believed that resources are best allocated by the free market, not central planners or the federal government. Austrian economists favor free market capitalism and economic freedom, and they strongly oppose socialism. One of my favorite Austrian economists is Friedrich Hayek, who lived through the terror of Hitler's reign and believed that the prosperity of a society was driven by free markets enabling creativity, entrepreneurship, and innovation. He wrote a great book called The Road to Serfdom. You've probably heard the phrase, "the road to hell is paved with good intentions," right? Well, similarly, Hayek noted in his book that while central planners often have or at least start with noble intentions, each time they intervene in the economy and in the free society, it leads to problems and moral hazards that ultimately give rise to even more interventions as politicians try to fix the mess that was ultimately made. So what's a moral hazard? It refers to having an incentive to increase your exposure to risk because you don't really bear the full costs of that risk. So for example, banks engaging in risky lending practices because ultimately they are too big to fail and will be bailed out by the federal government. When did that happen? With each intervention, you move away from economic freedom to centralized authority with a powerful government serving powerful interests, and therein is the road to serfdom. Seyfedin Ammous actually put it very well in his book, The Bitcoin Standard. With fiat money, he said, quote, "Government plays the same role that God plays in religious scriptures, an omnipresent, omniscient force that merely needs to identify problems to satisfactorily address them. If negative government results are even considered, it is only to justify more government intervention." You know, America used to be the global standard for economic freedom, and economic freedom is fundamental to Austrian economics. It really refers to the freedom to be able to choose how to produce, sell, and use your resources while respecting others' choices to do the same. It lets supply and demand function freely based on value offered. And at the foundation of true economic freedom is the rule of law, property rights, and hard money that can't be expanded at whim by central authority. Sounds a lot like Bitcoin and its underlying principles, right? Well, sadly, today we live in a world of excessive debt, excessive government spending, and excessive regulations and taxes. And politicians really refuse to acknowledge their failures. So let's talk a little bit about Keynesian economics for a moment. It was named after John Maynard Keynes, who was Great Britain's representative at Bretton Woods post-World War II. That's where the US was made the center of the global monetary system, and the US dollars were made the global reserve currency. Now, Keynes believed that you should judge the health of an economy by the level of spending as opposed to saving. If you watch mainstream news during the holidays, which are coming up, you'll actually hear reporters talk about how much is being spent at stores as a measure of the health of our economy. Don't mind if most of that spending is in the form of credit cards and debt. We ordered our new toys from China, so things are looking up, right? Well, Keynesians would agree with that. And under Keynesian economics, government transfer payments and entitlement programs are also seen as good because they redistribute wealth, and Keynesians argue they stimulate the economy. So basically, hand out money even if it means creating it out of thin air, because that will keep people spending, and spending is good. We saw this grow exponentially during the pandemic. Keynes believed the government needs to intervene to manage economic demand and moderate boom and bust cycles. But while Keynesians believe central planning is necessary to manage money supply, Austrians believe it actually causes the boom and bust cycles by encouraging the misallocation of resources. So before we wrap up, let's dig into that a little bit more, because I think that at the heart of this whole discussion of Austrians versus Keynesians is really the question of what happened to capitalism in the US. Capitalism today is blamed for wealth inequality, excessive greed, and the demise of the middle class, right? But what's ironic is capitalism at its core is a system based on savings and capital accumulation. Capitalism does not drive debt spirals and conspicuous consumptions and malinvestments. What drives that is government intervention through money printing and artificially low interest rates. Once again, I have to refer to Safe's brilliant writing. Capitalism is what happens when people drop their time preference, defer immediate gratification, and invest in the future. Debt-fueled mass consumption is as much a normal part of capitalism as asphyxiation is a normal part of respiration. Well said, Safe. Keynesian economics is the system we currently live in. Is it working? I guess it depends who you ask. But if you need to keep spending and borrowing and keep interest rates low just to keep the boat afloat, I don't think you have a healthy economy. I think you have a bubble waiting to pop, a bubble that's propped up by the money printer. For a long time, returning us to monetary responsibility probably seemed like a fantasy to most people. But as Hayek wrote in 1984, I don't believe we shall ever have a good money again before we take the thing out of the hands of government. That is, we can't take it violently out of the hands of government. All we can do is by some sly, roundabout way introduce something that they can't stop. If only he were alive to see Bitcoin. For more headlines, head to bitcoinmagazine.com.